Jan, it is a development to celebrate for Malawi, given the fact that we had diplomatic relations souring last year and we had Britain withdrawing funding for Malawi. So walk us through the type of support that Britain is going to come to the party with now.
Well, I think the important thing to keep in mind is Britain has really provided budget support as well as other sort of humanitarian support to Malawi. Now, the expectation was that the first mover would be, well, at least it was my expectation, that the IMF would be the first mover to really announce a normalization of relationships with Malawi. However, I think given the urgency of the situation, the UK government has stepped in and already started providing support to Malawi. Of course, this is as a consequence of the Malawi kwacha now being a much more market-determined currency, exchange rate rather, after the central bank devalued the currency from about 165 to about 250, 255 in the beginning of May. So I think that has signaled a normalization of relations between the two countries. Also the diplomatic relations will most likely, well, almost certainly will be re-established. If you recall, the High Commissioner was expelled from Malawi last year as a consequence of a diplomatic disagreement, diplomatic spat, and I think the announcements have now been made that a new diplomatic person will be appointed. So I think aid will start to flow back into Malawi, and it should come as huge relief to the country.
Yep, Andrew Mitchell is in fact the diplomat who's going to be taking post in Malawi now, and it seems that both sides of the parties are optimistic about the state of relations as they stand. Do we have any indication of the size of the gap that needs to be plugged in Malawi right now? How much funding do they need to come back into the economy?
It's difficult to say exactly what they need, but one report that I had seen mentioned that Malawi had in fact given up about $1 billion in support over the period where aid and support was withheld. So perhaps one could use that $1 billion as a kind of a benchmark for the funding gap that exists for the country. But this, of course, is over a period of time. So, yeah, I would estimate it at about $1 billion.
In light of the fact that we've had that sharp devaluation of the Malawian kwacha, as you said, from 165 to around 250, what are the short-term implications of this for Malawians in general, given the fact that you're looking at a situation right now where inflation could start spiking? Do we have any forecast as to how this is going to impact the economy right now?
Yes, I think inflation will certainly suffer. This year so far, I think inflation has averaged above 11%. The last print in April was 11.4% year on year. We expect inflation to go up to probably around about 20% by year end. However, on the positive side, the tobacco industry is sure to benefit from this cumulative about 40% devaluation of the kwacha, insofar as, of course, earnings will now be pushed up by the weaker kwacha. This will impact
so that, of course, is positive for
household
exporters.
income. Absolutely. It will also probably give a boost to the rest of the agricultural sector. However, keep in mind that the government's farm input and subsidy program will have to be scaled back because of additional costs of importing seed and fertilizer and so forth. But all in all, I think for the biggest industry in Malawi, tobacco, it certainly is a positive. indicator.
President Banda already seems to have come out with quite a bang in terms of sweeping reforms, some might say. She fired the central bank governor. She's also come out with a number of statements in terms of what she plans to do, overhauling parastatals, looking at small issues like traffic management to water management, sanitation, land registry. She's come out with a lot of sweeping changes right now and a lot on the table for her going forward. What's your evaluation of some of these changes that she's proposing?
I think it will be difficult to implement all those type of infrastructure and socially responsible programs all at once. It will, of course, crucially depend on funding from overseas. So probably what will happen is that the government will have to prioritize spending on the most important sectors, probably trying to protect the most vulnerable and poorest in society against the impact of possibly higher food inflation if that arises. Keep in mind that Malawi is a very poor country and there's a lot of vulnerable people, and also dependence on agriculture makes the country vulnerable to rain-fed agriculture obviously makes the country's standard of living highly dependent on weather patterns.
Yeah, and that factor is, as we all know, very difficult or impossible to control. Jan, thanks for sharing those insights with us. Jan Duvenage joining us there from Standard Bank Research.